Hi guys, today we're going to look at why Nietzsche said that the pursuit of pleasure makes you vulnerable to women. This is an interesting quote because at first it sounds like a joke. Women are obsessed with pleasure. So if you're chasing the same thing, shouldn't you be less vulnerable to them? But when you think about this for a moment, you realize that Nietzsche was actually referring to a different kind of pleasure. In fact, in this video, we're going to uncover a much deeper secret about female nature that most men never realize until it's too late. So let's get straight into it. The quote in question comes from Twilight of the Idols, one of Nietzsche's last books written in 1888. The book is divided into two parts, the Orphic Sayings and the Antichrist. We'll focus on the former as the latter isn't relevant to today's topic. The Orphic Sayings consists of 271 short fragmented aphorisms, many of which have nothing to do with women. However, there is one that stands out among the rest, and that is number 209. Beware of the pleasure that makes you weak, O man, for it is feminine. Before we can decipher the meaning of this quote, we need to understand what Nietzsche meant by the term woman. He didn't just mean biological females, but rather used the term metaphorically to describe certain types of people. For Nietzsche, being feminine referred to weakness, passivity, and a lack of willpower. To be more precise, he was talking about something called reactive, or as he put it, passive will. In other words, following your desires instead of taking charge of your life through self-discipline and a proactive approach. So the pleasure that Nietzsche warned about wasn't necessarily sexual in nature, but rather any type of pleasure that caused you to become weaker. Now, you might be thinking, what's wrong with that? And it's a fair point. There's absolutely nothing wrong with indulging yourself from time to time. But here's where things get complicated. According to Nietzsche, there is a difference between active and passive pleasures. Active pleasure is the result of taking positive actions to improve your life. Passive pleasure, on the other hand, is the result of simply giving in to your desires and living life on easy mode. In his book Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche wrote, "There are 4 types of pleasure which I distinguish according to their sources. The pleasures of the senses, the pleasures of imagination, the pleasures of intellect, and the pleasures of the will to power. The first 3 are considered passive pleasures as they don't require any effort to attain. They're easy, effortless, and as Nietzsche pointed out, feminine. The pleasure of the senses is pretty self-explanatory. It refers to pleasures such as eating, drinking, sleeping, and sex. The pleasure of imagination refers to daydreams and fantasies. The pleasure of intellect refers to mental masturbation, such as overly critical thinking, overanalyzing, and intellectualizing your way out of any real action. On the other hand, the 4th type of pleasure, the pleasure of the will to power, requires effort and discipline to attain. This is what Nietzsche considered to be an active pleasure, and it doesn't come from the things you do, but rather who you are becoming in the process. As Nietzsche wrote, this is the pleasure of creation, the only quite masculine pleasure. So the key to understanding Nietzsche's warning is realizing that not all pleasures are created equal. Some may feel good momentarily, but leave you feeling empty and weak afterwards, while others may require more effort, but lead to genuine happiness and self-mastery. But why does Nietzsche specifically single out women in this context? As we've already established, he uses the term woman metaphorically to describe weakness and passivity. So by saying that the pleasure that makes you weak is feminine, he's essentially saying that it leads to weakness. But why is that? Why does passive pleasure lead to weakness? To answer this question, we need to take a look at how the brain works. Have you ever noticed how the things that feel good often make you lazy? Food, for example, tastes best when you're just lying around doing nothing. Sex feels best when you're not trying to achieve anything and can just lay back and relax. Watching pornography is best when you're procrastinating on your tasks and responsibilities. Even drugs feel best when you're running away from your problems and looking for a way out. These examples illustrate how pleasures that are not earned feel best when you being irresponsible and running away from your problems. But why is that? Why does pleasure feel best when combined with irresponsibility? The answer lies in the neurochemical reaction that takes place in your brain. Every time you indulge in some form of easy pleasure, your brain releases a cocktail of chemicals that include dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin. These chemicals produce a pleasurable feeling, causing you to repeat the behavior. Over time, however, your brain becomes accustomed to these pleasure-induced chemicals, leading to a tolerance that requires increasingly larger amounts of pleasure to achieve the same high. This is known as the hedonic treadmill. Not only that, but research has also found that indulging in excessive amounts of pleasure can actually decrease your pain threshold, making you more susceptible to pain and less able to cope with it. Here's another way to look at it. Think of life as a video game. When you play a game on easy mode, you don't face any real challenges and the game becomes boring and meaningless. You might as well not even be playing. On the other hand, when you play on hard mode, you're constantly facing challenges that test your skills and push you to improve. Although it's more difficult, the game becomes more engaging and rewarding when you finally overcome a tough challenge. Life is much the same. When you live life on easy mode and constantly seek out passive pleasures, you'll find that they quickly become meaningless and unsatisfying. This is because humans are meant to overcome challenges and grow from them. We thrive when we have goals to strive for and obstacles to overcome. When we don't, we become bored and restless. That's why people who live lives full of ease and comfort often end up feeling unfulfilled and even depressed despite having everything they could ever want. So if passive pleasure is so detrimental, why do so many people seek it out? The answer lies in our basic biological instincts. Human beings are driven by two main instincts, self-preservation and self-reproduction. Self-preservation is the drive to ensure our own survival and well-being. Self-reproduction is the drive to pass on our genes and create offspring. Both of these instincts are important for the survival of the species, but they can cause us to behave in ways that go against our best interests. Think about it. How many relationships have you seen that involved a man and a woman, where the man was in love with the woman and the woman was in love with someone else? The man always ends up getting hurt. And why is that? Because he allowed his instinct to control him and ignore the signs. The woman wanted someone who was worthy of her, but the man was blinded by lust and didn't see the red flags. This phenomenon occurs in all areas of life. When you allow your basic instincts to control you, you become vulnerable to those who know how to manipulate them. And guess who knows how to manipulate these instincts better than anyone else? Women. Evolutionary biology tells us that females are more discerning when it comes to choosing a partner, while males tend to be more promiscuous. Females have more to lose when choosing a partner, as pregnancy is physically demanding and risky. Males, on the other hand, can easily pass on their genes without risking their own safety. This means that females are more likely to choose partners based on certain qualities, such as status, resources, and attractiveness. Males, on the other hand, are more likely to choose partners based on physical beauty alone. When men pursue women solely for sex, they're essentially tapping into the female instinct for self-preservation. Women instinctively know that they can use their beauty and sexuality as a means of obtaining resources and security. This is why women tend to date older, wealthier men. Men who chase women for sex are essentially offering them a valuable resource, their body. In exchange, they expect the woman to satisfy their primal desire for sex. However, this transaction rarely goes in the man's favor. Women who accept the man's offer are often looking for more than just sex. They're looking for someone who can provide them with resources, status, and security. Once the man has fulfilled his end of the bargain, the woman is often quick to move on to the next suitor who can offer her more. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said that women are only interested in men who are above them. They don't want someone who is beneath them. If you're constantly chasing women for sex, you're sending the message that you're beneath them. They're the ones who are desired, and you're the one doing the desiring. This puts you at a disadvantage and makes you vulnerable to being used. The solution, according to Nietzsche, is to avoid being a slave to your instincts and learn to master them instead. This is what he meant when he said that the pleasure that makes you weak is feminine. By learning to control your instincts, you become more masculine and less vulnerable to being used by those who seek to exploit them. So remember, brothers, the key to becoming truly powerful lies in your ability to resist temptation and stay focused on your goals. Don't be a slave to your instincts. Master them. Be strong enough to say no to instant gratification and yes to delayed gratification. Only then will you be truly free. And that's it for today. If you liked this video, please make sure to show your support. Until next time.